And don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast. AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to line number one, our featured guest today. I know this guy's been really, really busy putting out a whole lot of fires, and we are very appreciative to have him on our schedule today. That would be Everett Kelley, who is the national president of the American Federation of Government Employees, one of the great sponsors here on America's Workforce, AFGE.org. And, you know, Mr. Kelley, when we set up this interview, which was a while ago, and I appreciate your time because I know you're really busy right now. February is Black History Month. And what we have done throughout the month is talk to leaders like yourself. We had Lee Saunders on, Fred Redmond, just a couple of name drops here. And we wanted to talk about the importance of Black history, which, let's be honest, in some areas of the country is being erased or forgotten. Right. And I want to talk, we have to talk about that. And we have to talk about your challenges going on right now. But you know what? Congratulations are in order. And I say that because I remember when you came out, the drive to 325,000 union members.
Yes, sir.
You reached that, right?
Yes, sir. This past Friday we did.
Yeah. And so what's the number right now?
It's the last I looked, it was 325,051. The last I remember. Now, what? And thank you for having me, first of all. But when we first came up with that goal, it was a very robust goal, and we had planned on being at that by the end of this year, December 2025. We wanted to reach 325,000. So we coming in at least 11 months early.
And it wasn't by design. I guess the guy in the White House had something to do with this. And you've never seen it. What did I see? Something like 8,000 in 1 week? Something like that?
Absolutely. The first week in February, we had over 8,000 net gain. That's correct.
Amazing. Just amazing.
And I said to the Washington Post, and I said it jokingly, that we really should send an organizing award to the president, because he's really doing a lot of organizing for us.
Yeah, he is. And you're accepting that. I understand that. But at the same time, we're seeing so many federal workers being let go. And let's touch on that, because now I was looking at your bio before we started this whole thing, and you started, 44 years ago, 1981,
That's
in the
correct.
American Federation of Government Employees. You haven't seen anything close to what's happening right now, have you?
I have never seen anything like this. I've served in almost every capacity inside of the union. I started out as shop steward, chief steward, vice president, executive vice president, president of the local, national vice president, national secretary of treasury, and now president of AFGE. I've saw a lot of actions through the various administrations, but I've never, ever seen anything like we're seeing here today.
And how are you handling all of this? Because this is I know you're in court, and it's got to drain some of your resources. On the other side of this, I guess you had to know something horrible was going to happen here, because in the first administration of Trump, he attacked federal unions. Let's be honest about that. As far as this time, a little more challenging, isn't it?
Oh, it's quite a bit more challenging. Matter of fact, we are not surprised because, like you said, during the first administration of Trump, he came after unions. And so we was anticipating him doing some things. We read Project 2025, although on the campaign trail, he said he didn't know anything about it. But every play that he's making right now is from Project 2025. So we were expecting some of it, just not this massively.
You said, and I saw this latest news release on AFGE.org, that these mass firings are reckless, and you will fight, and I know you will, you'll fight for all impacted employees. As far as the reckless part, can you elaborate on that?
Well, just for instance, as you know, he fired a bunch of people that was taking care of the nuclear uh, uh,
Security.
security, right?
Right.
Then all of a sudden the light came on, right? And boom, I shouldn't have fired those guys, right? It's just a repeat of what Elon Musk did at his organization. He fired all of those people, 80% of them, then lost 80% of his profit. Then he began to ask for people to come back to work. This is the same type of results that you're going to see in these instances. And they're going to affect the vast uh, amount of American people that are depending on government services every single day. You're going to see this trickle down, to where it's affecting every family in the United States of America.
If you don't mind, let's tear this down a little bit because the agencies that you represent, for one, with Social Security Administration, and I know that some of those offices have closed because of staffing issues, and
Right.
and this whole thing here with Trump and Musk is, well, there's too many employees. We got to trim it down. There's waste, there's fraud. You're hearing all those kind of things. But on the other hand, I think because we have a population increase over the years, and we've actually seen per population less federal employees to take care of all the folks there. Let's look at Social Security. And the other thing that concerns me about this, and I'd like to get your point of view, is the private information, Social Security numbers. I mean, we've got these kids, basically kids, that Elon Musk has. I mean, they're whiz kids, I take it, but you've got to be concerned about personal information getting out in the open space, right?
You're definitely real concerned about that. Not just for the membership. We're concerned for the American people. That their personal information, their personal data, is in the hands of people that you don't even know. Normally we would give consent for people to have that type of information, but in this instance, they just came in and they took hold of personal information that they were not entitled to in any stretch of the imagination when you look at the law, because you have to be vetted through certain regulations and criteria in order to get that data. In order to get my personal information, I have to give consent. I didn't give consent, and for this president and Elon Musk, right, to come in and grab that data that belong to the American people is completely outrageous and it's unfair. And who knows what's going to happen with that information in the future. Now, I don't know the Geek Squad that's actually, gathering this data, but what do they do with it?
Right.
When they're no longer with Elon Musk, what do those people do with this data that they have obtained? We have no way of understanding that. And no one is giving any information to the American people as to why you need it, number one, and what you're going to do with it, number two. And then, number three, what are you going once you've accomplished the mission that you're trying to accomplish, what are you going to do with the data?
Yeah, this has like security breach written all over it. And at some point, this has to be a crime, especially if that information is released to the wrong people. And it's scary right now, very scary times. If you can, I'd like to get into trying to put the brakes on this whole thing. Now, I know there's a number of altogether, I'm counting close to 70 lawsuits. And because of that, this is ending up in the courts. And you probably heard that the White House is saying, well, if, we're just trying to clean it up, we're fighting fraud, we're fighting corruption. And if the judges stop it, maybe the judges are corrupt. Well, how do you respond to that, Mr. Kelley?
Well, I don't know if there is a response because who in the world would have ever thought that America would end up at this juncture? It is certainly wage, fraud, and abuse that uh, we're dealing with this situation right now. Because, for instance, you lay off a person and say, "I'm gonna pay you for 6 months to stay at home," right? That's wage, fraud, and abuse. You don't have to look far. If you really want to figure out what's wage, fraud, and abuse, then ask us. We can tell you. The same thing, when you start talking about federal employees and laying off federal employees, for no apparent reason whatsoever, this is the key. The key is that if you really want to um, uh, downsize, there are policies, there are procedures in place for that. Follow those policies, follow those procedures. Otherwise, you're guilty of what you're accusing the federal government of being guilty of.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you? I know you're growing the ranks of the membership at AFGE. What, and I'm sure you've had many, many conversations with your members right now. How are they holding up in through all this? Because every day is a challenge, and something else is being thrown at them. And I'm just wondering, what's the status right now, in your opinion?
Well, this is what I will say. Our members are used to being targeted. Okay, they don't appreciate it. They don't like it. It's still stressful, and they are stressful. I've had to listen to so many members in tears for fear of their jobs, for fear that they're not going to be able to provide for their families and their children and those types of things, and they are absolutely tired of going through that, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the intent. Well, matter of fact, we know that's the intent of this administration. They want to antagonize the federal workforce so that they will not want to come to work and do a good job. But if they come to work, they're going to do a good job. That's what these employees are made of, okay? These are very patriotic employees that's going to do their job no matter what they have to deal with every day. But it doesn't eliminate the stress and the strain of waking up every morning wondering, what am I going to go through today? What is the federal government going to go through today? Why is this administration coming after us when we're making progress, when we are doing absolutely astounding work for the American society? Why do we have to go through this? This is what's being asked. So many unanswered questions. They ask me a lot of questions I don't have the answer for. Because this administration have not taken the time to address any of these issues with any union or any representative or the workforce for that matter. They just come in and they make the decision and they go with it, regardless of how it tears at the seam.
Yeah, and that's where the term reckless comes in. I get it.
Yes.
Everett Kelley joining us on our live line today as our featured guest. He is the national president of the American Federation of Government Employees. AFGE.org is the national website. They are the largest union representing federal and D.C. government employees, and their ranks are growing because of what's going on in the administration. We'll continue with Mr. Kelley right after this. By the way, you're listening to America's Workforce. And don't forget, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. Let's go back to our live line and rejoin our featured guest today. That would be Everett Kelley, the national president of the American Federation of Government Employees. We're talking about what's going on in Washington, the attack on federal workers. Now, AFGE, you got a lot of government agencies that you represent, and we've done a lot here on America's Workforce to showcase what work the folks are doing in those various agencies, like the Veterans Administration. Let's start right there. And I have to ask you, and from what I've gathered over the interviews, there's a shortage of people working in the VA. Part of that, too, it's kind of a cumbersome process to get employees through the system. It takes a while. And a lot of the employees are people that serve this country. They're veterans. And now I'm reading, what is it, about 1,000 cuts there or something like that? What's the number right now, to your knowledge?
Well, so far it's about 1,000 in the VA that are probationary employees. They just came in, sent them a letter, said that you're terminated, no rhyme or reason. This is so unfortunate for the American people. Some of these employees were, you know, matter of fact, most of them had excellent performance ratings, right? Yet they
Mm-hmm.
have been terminated, and they're using the skies that they've not been the average worker. But the matter of fact is they're working above the average, and they're coming in and just destroying this workforce. If you ask me, I mean, I'm a veteran myself, okay, and I wouldn't want to go anywhere other than the veterans VA for my medical needs. for my healthcare needs. Okay, but what they're doing in essence is trying to put the VA in a mission failure, if you will, so that they can easily contract out this work. That's the bottom line. And who's going to
Yeah.
get this work? I mean, billionaire partners that have contributed to these campaigns. And that's not right. It's not fair to the veterans. It's not fair to the American people. Now, when you look at our workforce, we represent the federal workforce is about 2.2 million workers. Now, of that 2.2 million, 642,000 of those are veterans. And so when you are attacking the Veterans Administration, you're attacking the veterans, because they're not going to get the adequate care that they rightly deserve if you start downsizing that agency. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, you got veterans taking care of veterans here. This is really scary. If we can go back to those probationary employees, and maybe you could help me. And I when I was going through all the news on all this, I'm just wondering what kind of protections, like when do they become a union member? Say I start at the VA as a probationary employee. Joining the union, when does that start? I'd say I want to be in the union. I know some people don't have to be in the union, but when does that stage start? And obviously, being in the union is going to give you some collective bargaining protections. Can you address that for me?
Well, let me say that a probationary employee, depending on which agency, some probationary employees do not have union protection. Okay, because they're there for that probationary period, that 1 year period that they have to stay on before they can be converted to a career conditional employee. They are in a probationary period, and they some cases don't have union protection, and that's part of the problem. They know this, so they come in and they wipe out these employees that are just there on a probationary assignment. You know, that don't have union protection, which they can join the union, but they wouldn't have grievance rights, or they wouldn't have anything other than they might have MSPB. They might have a claim through maybe the FLRA, but not necessarily through an arbitration because of the contract. So
Mm-hmm.
they picking on people that can't help themselves
Yeah,
in many
yeah.
instances.
Yeah, it's easy for them to do that. You mentioned the FLRA, and that's kind of the NLRB in the federal government, and the
Right.
NLRB right now is pretty much neutered. Is the FLRA in the same kind of situation right now? What have they done to that?
It's in the same kind of situation. Matter of fact, I think they fired two FLRA appointees last week or the week before. So even filing at the FLRA leads to nowhere, right? It's just a road to nowhere because they've successfully dismantled all of the agencies that has any governance over, the various agencies.
Mm-hmm. If you don't mind, I'd like to switch gears here. And because, like I said at the top of this interview, that I wanted to bring you on here to reflect on Black History Month. And as you know, it's been a struggle. Civil rights has been a struggle in this country. I mean, fighting for voter. I'm going back to the 60s, the protests. And I wish and I hope sometime from this point on, we're going to see some more uprisings like this because people are speaking out. In my opinion, it's not enough right now. Maybe they're waiting for more things to happen. I don't know. But the struggle, if you can address the struggle that's going on right now and talk about the struggle for obviously Black Americans, what happened? And it's been ever since the founding of this country. It hasn't been easy. But can you reflect on that, sir?
You know, this country, in my opinion, has been fortunate uh, in recent years to have leaders that was concerned about every American. That's not the case today, if you ask me. Now, as a young boy growing up in the deep South, I experienced a lot of racism. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, but we had those activists out there fighting for civil rights. Civil rights became a part of the discussion, at the dinner table, at church, everywhere you went. It was about, everyone standing up for those things that are right, that everyone could have an equal share. But what we're seeing today, with the elimination of DEI and any form of where a person could feel like they are truly a part of these United States of America, those things seemingly are just being disallowed. Okay, when you start thinking about this administration, to say that we're not going to allow federal employees to celebrate Black History Month on the clock, you know,
Hmm.
anymore, you know, that is completely taking us backwards. That's putting us back to where we were over 60 years ago. To think that they're not going to allow Martin Luther King birthday celebration. I mean, this administration is directly attacking, any form of progress as relates to race relation. Our country has come a long way, but it's being pushed backwards, if you
Hmm.
will. I mean, I have flashbacks, every day when I come and look at what's happening across the federal government right now. When I see, talk about eliminating the Department of Education, that has allowed for underprivileged children to make sure that they get the same quality of education as people, on the other side of town, or, what have you. What doesn't matter about the demographics, but just make sure that everybody get an equal share at education, right?
Hmm.
When you start talking about eliminating, workforces because they worked in a DEI program. I mean, in one instances, I know of a program that was mandated by the Trump administration and the last administration, and the people that's working in that program today was fired a couple of weeks ago because they worked in that program. This is taking a bad turn for any form of African American history.
Mr. Kelly, one more question here, and I appreciate your time. Do you think this is part of a bigger picture of privatization? Because that's what's been going on ever since the Reagan years, and probably even before that. You got to privatize because, oh, you're going to get a better product because they're not federal employees, they're contractors, and usually those contracts go to people that are pretty good donors. I mean, look what's going on with Elon Musk. The VA, the VA. There's parts of that have been privatized. What's your thoughts about this?
Well, if anyone listened to my interviews, they'll understand that I truly believe this is about privatization. When you start thinking in terms of cutting 75% of the workforce, these are doctors that take care of the VA and veterans that come for health care. These are food inspectors that make sure that the food that we eat is healthy. These are scientists at the EPA that make sure that the air quality is excellent. These are Social Security Administration workers. And so this work has to be done no matter what. So if you cut 75% of the federal workforce, who's going to do that job? It still has to be done,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
so that opened the door for private contract. That's why I said I think that they want to put us in mission failure. They want the federal government to go into a mission failure so they can say we got to contract out this work, right? And who get the contracts? Except for the likes of Elon Musk and the rest of the buddies that have contributed heavily to the political campaign, and that's not fair to American people because this is what I know as a retiree from the federal government myself, from the Department of Defense. I know that contractors always price gouge. Okay, they'll set a contract that first year, and there'll be a minimum amount that they'll charge. But the next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, everything began to skyrocket.
Yeah.
I know of one instance where, and you may be aware of some of this because it was really public, where a contractor was charging anywhere from $600 to $1,000 for a hammer. This is what you get into when you start private contracting because it's about the bottom line. Whereas the most of the federal employees are very patriotic and they want to provide a service for the American people. Okay, and it's not for profit. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the difference.
Yeah. I'm old enough to remember the $600 toilet seat. Do you remember that one?
I remember that one too. Yeah, yeah. You know.
Well, sir, I thank you for your time. I got one more question here. I read earlier that you're a published author. It seems to me that your next book is writing itself right now. What do you think?
Yeah, all you need is a journal.
Mr. Kelley, thank you so much for staying with us here. I know you're a really busy guy. Good luck on all those lawsuits and keep in touch with us. Like I say to so many guests, you got a friend here on America's Workforce. So
Thank
stay
you.
safe and stay in touch. Okay, sir?
Thank you. And we know that. Appreciate your friendship.